Today's guest is Dan Martell. Dan is a five-time founder, and he has three-time exits under his belt from the start of his career, which is pretty impressive. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a husband. He's a father. He's working as a coach also right now to high-performing SaaS founders, and he's an angel investor with over 40 investments in different companies. He became a millionaire at the age of 27. So I think you'll get to hear his story and lots of lessons which you learned from his journey. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Yuli, thank you so much for having me, man. I am honored to be here. I'm excited. I appreciate the chance.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. I think a great starting point can be you talking about your background. I think you have a very interesting background. So for people who don't know you and never heard you before, maybe you can start talking about yourself and that part.
Yeah, so my story, I'm 17 years old. I'm driving a stolen car, high-speed chase, and I'm high on drugs with a handgun sitting next to me in a backpack. And I come off the highway, police just happen to have a routine roadblock. I bust through that, end up crashing in the side of a house. And I made a decision when I stole the car that if the police caught me, I was going to pull the handgun to let them do their job and take my life. And as I was sitting there, I was pulling on the gun in the bag and it was stuck and it kept getting stuck and I kept pulling and pulling. And eventually the door opened to the car and the police grabbed me and kind of dragged me. My feet didn't even touch the ground. I ended up in the back of the cop car. And I woke up sober the next day in a jail cell in Eastern Canada, wondering what the hell my life was going to look like. And I ended up getting sentenced to about 16 months total. I did 5 to 6 months in an adult facility called St. John Regional Correctional Center, and then eventually got released to a rehab center in Sussex, New Brunswick, called Portage. And I did 11 months at a program where the average is 6 months. So I had a lot of stuff to work on. And it was at the end of that program, I was helping one of the maintenance guy, Rick, clean out the cabin. And there was an old 486 computer with a yellow book on Java programming sitting right next to it. And I opened it up, and I always thought programming was like, hexadecimal numbers and zeros and ones, and it read like English. So I actually booted up the computer and followed chapter 1 of this book. And, I got the computer to say, "Hello world." And I thought it was a genius, right? And turns out I'm not. But that kind of spark, got me thinking about like computers, and there's something there. Because at the point of that life, through rehab, I rebuilt the relationship with my friends, my family. I would burn a lot of trust and really understand who I was and what made me tick. And, I got out shortly after. This is 1997 timeframe. I discovered this thing you might have heard of called the internet. And it turned out it was kind of a big deal. And, that really set my path on a different trajectory. And, programming became the ultimate, or the programming became kind of my new addiction. And then entrepreneurship, the ultimate personal development program. Right. And I'm here today because of that.
What do you think made you pick up the book? I think someone can be in your situation and maybe see something which is valuable, a book, a mentor, anything, but not really use this fully. What do you think at the time helped you actually pick it up and use it, read it?
I think it was just like the moment in time. I think sometimes, it's almost like when the student ready, the teacher will appear kind of thing. I feel like at that point I was finishing my program. I had a month left. I was helping out Rick. I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I had to go back to high school to eventually graduate. And I don't know, I guess I was just in that right mindset to like be open to things, right? And I can't even remember if there was other stuff I was entertaining, but I think that was it. It's just like, oh, I wonder what this is about. And I read it and I was like, oh, it's not as complicated as I thought. And then I got the computer to do the thing. And I was like, shit, if I can I build an app? Like, can I build a product? And then turned out, yeah, there's this thing called Visual Basic. And I built an app that let my friends build CDs to burn. So totally illegal, right? But
that's how
the first thing I ever built was a FTP server to synchronize all the MP3 on my computer that would allow them to build the playlist on their computer that shipped me over the order, and I would charge them $20 for a CD. So I don't know, man. I was just like, I was ready. And I think sometimes you just got to be ready. You got to be asking. And I guess in my head at that point, this is 20 years ago, I must have been asking, and that's what connected me to that moment.
And what do you think led you specifically to entrepreneurship? Sounds like you already started selling
Dude,
CDs.
I've been an entrepreneur since
From
I was
even
like,
earlier before as well?
yeah. I mean, the first thing I ever did that I think I got paid for was convincing the neighborhood kids to help me build a snow fort and then charging them 25 cents to play in it. I mean, so essentially at like 9 years old, I was in real estate, so like I've always had that, entrepreneurial bent. Unfortunately, nothing I did was legal for a long time, right? My dad used to plead with me when I was a teenager, like, Dan, if you could only figure out something you're passionate about that isn't illegal, I think you'd do really well in life. And I was like, I hear you, Dad. I don't know why I make these decisions. And so that's why when I discovered computers, I was like, man, this could be really cool, right?
Mm-hmm. So with SaaS, you found something which you can apply your entrepreneur mind and legal.
I mean, SaaS is what we call it today, but back then it was just like building stuff. Like if somebody asked me like, what do you do, Dan? I solve problems, and software is the tool. You know what I mean? Like I love to say, what's your problem? Oh, that's a software solution. Here's how it works, right? Like my first failed company was a company called Maritime Vacation that I built for my dad, which is essentially VRBO or Airbnb in 1999, 2000, right? So it should have been huge, wasn't. The guy with atthecottage.com beat me. But yeah, I loved knowing that, and this is the thing that I fell in love with, Yuli, was building things that I knew I could share with the world. So people take for granted podcasts, anybody can download it. Picture, take it on your phone, share it on Facebook, the whole world can see it. Back then, my dad worked at Siemens Westinghouse. Westinghouse eventually got bought by Siemens for 26 years, and I had no clue what he did for work. And here I was building stuff on the internet, and I could grab a link and share that with anybody, and they could see what I built. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And that's how I got into building companies, almost to fund doing more of that.
Did you always look at it from a perspective of like from early age that you want to solve a problem versus just make money?
I wasn't a money guy. See, this is what's interesting is my brother was a money guy. My brother was buy an old car, fix it up, sell it. Why? Because you can make money. If I bought an old car to fix it, it's because I wanted to drive it, right? Like I was very it had to solve a problem. Why did I get the kids to help me build that tree fort? I wanted a tree fort. Like every business I've ever created to this day was built to solve my own problem. I've never done anything for the money. Turns out that that's an incredible way to build a company, right? But that's definitely just not the way and I don't agree that you have to do it that way. Even when I started my company, I built a company called Spheric Technologies when I was 24. And that really was the first success in my life. We grew 150% year over year, 30 plus employees got acquired for millions of dollars. And I was the sole founder, right? And even before that, as you mentioned, at 27, I remember my accountant calling me. I was driving on this road called Von Harvey, 4-lane. He goes, you want to hear something cool? I said, what? He goes, you got $1 million in retained earnings. And I was like, that's awesome. At first I was like, is that good or bad? And he was like, that's really good. And I was like, that's cool. But it didn't even I think at the time I was driving what would I have been driving? My Murano, like a 7-year-old SUV that I bought in the States because the Canadian dollar was higher. And it was just like, I never care about that stuff. I just like building cool stuff. So I built Spheric because I wanted to work with great people. I didn't actually want to be in the business we were in. I built the business because the business supported me hiring brilliant people. And those people were fun to work with. And what's cool about the business model at that company was I actually designed it that the core team were all programmers. And every other business function, from recruiting to finances to sales and marketing, were done by other companies. Because I didn't want them around because I didn't care. I was like, you guys are not cool. And look, this is not the world I think of today. Back then, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, That was what I was thinking. I was like, okay, I want 30, at the point we ended up with 30, but I just want a dozen amazing software minds to teach me, to inspire me, and we'll get paid to build cool stuff by these big enterprise companies. And then my job was just to figure out how to make it work.
Interesting. Do you think focusing on solving a problem is what makes great entrepreneurs? It's like a recipe that works for many other people in other companies instead of the money? Because I know many people focus on the money and not really on the problem.
I think it's not necessarily the question of solving a problem. It's being passionate about the problem. So I think too often people fall in love with the solution, not the problem. So I fall in love with the problem. And then I'm willing to iterate around the solution set to find the right solution for the problem. And as long as I'm passionate about the problem, and this is something Steve Jobs said, back at the D conference, he was being interviewed. I think it was Bill Gates on stage with him. They asked him, what's the number one secret to success? And Bill Gates gave his answer. I can't remember what it was because it's probably something vanilla. But Steve Jobs said passion. He said, but not for the reason that most people think of passion, right? Yes, you need to be passionate and excited about your business. He said passion because as you're building your business, there's going to be a point where what you're building is going to be so hard and all the data points against you succeeding. And there's in anybody's right mind, they would give up and nobody would hold it against you. It's just like, this makes no sense. And in that moment, because you're passionate, you're going to move forward. You're going to take another step. And that's the reason why you're going to succeed. So that is why being passionate is important. So you need to solve your own problem because that's a good place to look for things that you might be passionate about working on.
Do you think there are any other things which can help someone go through this hard time? I mean, I know I've been through it for every business I've done. Every entrepreneur probably goes through it. Besides being passionate, maybe on the problem,
yeah.
What other things help?
There's a bunch of stuff. Like I coach a bunch of really high performing SaaS founders. Some of the, the founding team of ClickFunnels, 0 to 100 million in 5 years. I work with them. I work with, Trevor at carrot.com and a bunch of really cool B2B SaaS founders. And to say they never have issues is crazy. But here's what I suggest to them, especially when I think the world, it's the highs are highs and the lows are low, right? And there's this pendulum effect, right? The entrepreneurial pendulum. And you swing from exclamation mark, I'm going to take over the world. You might wake up there, Yuli, in the morning and you're like, this is amazing. I had an amazing day. I'm going to take over the world. I'm doing my life's work. And, later on you'll swing to question mark. What am I doing with my life? Why am I doing this? Why is it so hard? Right? And sometimes you'll swing back and forth between these two things, a couple times, a month, a couple times a week, and sometimes a couple times in the same freaking day, right? You wake up, you got a new deal in your inbox. 11 a.m., your key person quits on you. Blah, blah, like it literally roller coaster. So what do? One, you gotta focus on the why, okay? So too often, I just got finished rally car racing outside of Seattle, a place called Dirtfish, okay? Vance, I like to do things that scare me, okay? It's actually one of my core mottos is scare myself every day. So I'm not a rally car driver, but I like driving stuff. I like going fast. I'm kind of an extreme adrenaline junkie. So I was just there last week. And one of the things the instructor said was don't commit to the chaos, look through to the vision, okay? In the turn, okay? Because we're talking about dirt, trees, concrete blocks, okay? In the turn, even if you get unsettled, do not stay in the chaos. Do not start thinking, oh no, I screwed up the corner. Oh no, I'm not going to make it, blah, blah, blah. You got to look through the vision to the future. And I think that's number one, right? As an entrepreneur, you get knocked down, you get kicked in the stomach, you got a setback. You got to get up and focus on not this, but that further. Why are you doing this in the first place? So that's number one. Number two, I would say creating a list of accomplishments, right? So I call it the accomplishments list. I think everybody who started a business has done something that they feel proud of, even little. I'm talking about anything from winning the spelling bee as a teenager to maybe coming in second place as an athlete and whatever it is. Like build your list of accomplishments so that in those moments you can go back and remind yourself that you're a badass, okay? Because I truly believe every person listening, watching this session is a badass, and they just forgot that they've done things in their life because it's too easy to forget. And then I would say the third thing is stop looking. So when we feel bad about ourselves, it's because we're being selfish. We're looking at our results. We're looking at our progress. We're looking inward. Okay. What I would suggest is flip it and look outwards, meaning ask yourself, who can I help? Which sounds totally contradictory when you are in that mindset. But to me, this is the real opportunity, is saying, hey, I don't feel great about this outcome, but that doesn't mean I can't help somebody else. So picking up the phone, reaching out to your friend that you know that might be, in their business at whatever stage, offering to do, like, dude, one time I was driving, I went on Instagram, I was having a hard moment, this is probably 2 years ago, and I just tweeted, driving for the next 2 hours, if you need some help, send me a message back with your cell number and I'll give you a call. And I literally called people for 2 hours. At the end of that 2-hour drive, Yuli, how
did you feel?
I was amazed. I was feeling great. You know what I mean? Because that's what happens. I think too often we're looking inwards and we got to start giving out. And if you do those 3 things, I think it resets and gets you from the question mark phase over to exclamation mark really fast.
Do you think there are certain habits or things you can do to actually focus on those things? Because I know for me, part of me, for example, knows those things, but I don't always do it. I don't always focus on others, and sometimes
literally
I get stuck.
Write them down. These are the 3 things I do when things are tough. I literally have a blog.
How often would you look at it?
How to deal with being overwhelmed, or I don't even know what it's called. But I wrote it, and it was almost like I wrote it to solidify it, to then say, hey, when I'm tough, I go to the list, right? Like, too often people know what they should do. Hey, Yuli, you ever give advice to somebody else, and then after you gave it, you go, shit, that was really good. I should do that.
Pretty often, yeah.
So what I do is I create videos every week. I have for 3 years, right? But even before, I've always been like a systems playbook kind of guy. And I create kind of operating module, because I'm a software guy. So it's kind of, to me, it makes sense to people. They're like, wow, that's really detailed. That's just the way I think. I create like little operating procedures. So in this moment, do this. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. Because that way, A, when it happens, I don't have to think about what to do. I just go to the list. And B, after I get through that, I might have another idea to enhance it, and I can go back, update the list. And I know next time that happens, I now will go through that better enhanced list. So to me, having the list of saying, okay, whenever I get down on myself, I'm going to go do these 4 things. Oh, and one of the things I also talk about is go move your body, right? So like, get out, go for a run. So if you just got some bad news, go get your running sneakers on, get outside and go for a run. I don't give a shit if it's raining. I don't care if you got a meeting, cancel the meeting, go for a run. You're not going to be useful to anybody else until you get through that. It's hard to feel bad about your situation when you got your sweat on.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. One thing I want to touch regarding what you said, it's really curious for me. You said you're trying to scare yourself every day. I just don't want to skip over it. Like, how do you usually try and scare yourself every day besides doing rally racing, which I guess is not something to do every day?
It's really simple. You got to do things that make you feel uncomfortable. So like, it's not about scaring myself like, oh my God, I'm so scared. It's anything that causes you little anxiety. For example, taking a cold shower. Would you be excited to jump into a cold shower for 3 minutes, Yuli?
I personally do cold showers every day, but I train myself to do it.
But you get what I'm saying. Like, yeah. It's not something it's not like I'm scared to do it. It's just like, I don't want to do it. So it's kind of like, to me, I try to program myself to do things that are hard. And that might be a better way to think about scare yourself every day. It's do the hard things. So that could be, cold calling potential mentors, to, physical training, to making some calls for some key hires, to, shooting some videos because you really need to build some new marketing collateral, to whatever it is, to the things that scare you, like snowboarding or skiing, or, making a commitment to your spouse about changing a behavior, like whatever it is. I just think that whatever scares you or makes you anxious, it's those things that actually move the needle. So too often people say, I'm hustling. And I go, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm working 100-hour weeks. Working 100-hour weeks is not hustling. Okay. I'm going to throw this out there. If you think that just working is hustling, you're on crack. It's not true. Hustling is doing the things that scare you, that do the things that are hard. Okay. One of the mottos, I have 2 young boys, 5 and 6 years old, Max and Noah. And, for a long time, one of my good friends is Todd Herman. He wrote an incredible book called The Alter Ego Effect.
I know him.
And we've been talking about the stuff he wrote in that book for a long time. And one of the ideas is identity. Who are we? So for very young age, since my kids were little, I always say, what do Martells do, right? What's the identity of a Martell? And one of them is that we do hard things. And that's been something like any moment. The other day, my son finally took the training wheels, my 5-year-old, off his bike, and he was practicing. He wanted to give up. And I said, what do Martells do? He says, we do hard things. That's just one of many things we do. He got back on the bike. 6 months ago, we spent the winter months in San Diego. And I was hiking with my older son, Max. He's 6. And we were doing this mountain called Mount Cowles or Coles. It's a big mountain, okay? It takes like kind of there and back. We did the backside, 4 hours. He's a 6-year-old. And dude, the whole time he was crying and wanted to give up. And I just kept asking him, hey man, we can turn around. No issues. I'm not upset. I won't be frustrated, etc. But you know what Martells do? What do we do? Hard things. What kind of mindset we have? A growth mindset. Are we going forward or are we going back? We're going forward. And he kept doing it. Dude, it was the most amazing thing ever. So that to me is just an identity thing that I think that everybody can learn to program to be the person, right? So it's cool. Like you said, I do cold showers, no issues. Eventually you just end up being the person who does that. And it's not a thing that scares you anymore. It's just who you are. So that's why for me, it's like, when we meet in a year, I'll have to reintroduce myself because I'm not the same person you met today because my growth game is very strong. Does that make sense?
Completely. Yeah.
Cool.
What do you think someone can do besides identity? I think it's a great thing to really make sure you do the hard things. Let's say someone starts the day. I think it's a great point, like you brought up, like not to make sure you just work for the sake of work, but you really do the right things and the hard things, which really challenge you and really push the needle most likely.
Yeah. So to me, it's always about strategic planning. So like most people don't realize there's kind of 4 buckets of type of work you can do in a day. There's administrative work, which is like $10 an hour type work. There's the work itself, which is maybe $100 an hour if you want to give it a value. Then there's the management of the work, which is $500 an hour because it's more valuable. You're managing stuff. And then there's strategic work, which is the strategic thinking of planning of getting the outcome, right? It's not doing it. It's deciding how to prioritize and figure out what the right strategy and tactics are to execute. And then there's like, the little stuff, the managing of doing the work, the managers that make sure every week gets done. So one thing that people make a mistake is they don't spend any time in the strategic side. That to me is where, as you grow as an entrepreneur, that's where you need to spend more time. So for example, like annual planning, 10-year vision, 5-year vision, 3-year, 1 year, right? Numbers, list of accomplishments at each phase of those outcomes, mission, vision, values, all that stuff people hear about and they don't do it. And I'm like, if you don't have that, you don't have an operating model for how to make decisions, right? So when you ask me like, how does somebody figure out what to do that should scare them? If you don't know where you're going, then there's no way you have any way to prioritize or make decisions about today, right? If you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there. So how do you do that? Well, once I know where I'm going, then I need to figure out, the strategies, et cetera. So once I know that, so let's just say on a, because there's different lenses, you can use an annual, 3-year, 10-year plan, but let's say on an annual basis, we break it down to a quarter. Okay. Once I know on a quarterly basis, 90 days, this is the outcome I want to achieve. Then I break it down into rocks, right? Ideally 3 big rocks that you need to get done. These are new things. You still have to do the rest of the work, but you got to create these new things. And those big rocks have things that you're gonna have to accomplish. So you put those on. And then what I do is every Sunday, I sit down and I look at my outcomes for the quarter, the rocks, and then look at my calendar in the morning, specifically in the morning. So I use block time. I really believe that if it's not in your calendar, it's not going to happen. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my calendar, literally every minute of every day in 15-minute increments is allocated pretty much on Sunday for the next 7 days and the next week. And like pretty much, dude, I'm planning into 2020 and 2021 right now, right? Like I'm very much a strategic planner. And it's got all the fun stuff in there too. That's the cool part. It's got personal, professional, it's got me time, it's got family stuff. It's got, commitments I've made to others, all that fun stuff. And if I do that, then all of a sudden now when I'm planning, I'm not thinking of doing the work and we can think better. And then we lock in the things that need to get done. So to me, that's key. So you want to plan at least, if you had to say, what's the minimum effective dose, plan the next day, the night before. Do that. Start there. If you're not doing that, then you aren't working on the right stuff. And ideally, you're going to front load your morning with everything that you've been putting off. And if you keep doing that, eventually you get to a place where every morning is going to be stuff that's hard for you, but is the most important for you to get to the next level. And you don't even think about it. Like when my alarm goes off at 5 a.m., there's no like snooze. There's no like even setting the alarm the night before. It's not like I'm not going to set it. Dude, that's not an option. That's like, like your cold showers. It's not an option. It's just who I am. And my calendar's already decided. I decided the night before or the week before, Sunday, what I'm doing that morning to move my goals and outcomes forward. And I just attack them. And I ferociously attack them.
Mm-hmm. How much time do you spend on your weekly planning when you're doing it on Sunday?
Oh, it's not a lot of time because I've already done all the heavy lifting on the annual quarterly planning. So really it's just, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes, 30 minutes. Doesn't take me a lot of time because most of my week in the afternoons are already figured out. It's the morning in regards to the rocks, and it's really just moving things around, right? Like maybe there's a priority that's got to get shifted, but I've kind of already put
You've done the work. You've done the work basically.
Yeah.
And how much time do you think someone listening in, like every entrepreneur, should spend on the category of strategy in general, which can be like goals, the annual and quarterly, versus actually doing the things? What do you think is the right balance there?
Minimum 1 hour a week. Okay. Minimum 1 hour a week. Because it's all like where you're at. Yuli, if you have a team, like just in my coaching business, I have a business called SaaS Academy where I coach SaaS founders. I've got a team of 10 people on the core team and then probably another 10, part-time contractors. So like strategic planning for that business is a lot more than if you only have one employee. So it's kind of like the percentages go up. Like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, et cetera, they spend 98% of their week on strategic thinking. Does that make sense?
It does. That's what you want your CEOs, which you coach, also to spend the majority of their time of the week usually on strategizing.
Depends on the size of the business, right? Mm-hmm. Depends if the strategy is already figured out.
Do you think it's different for a new business? Someone like without much employees, like how would they maybe?
100%. It's just less time there because there's not that much shit going on. Like you don't have that much stuff to figure out. You got to figure out what business you're in and what you're selling, right? Mm-hmm. But the more the business grows, then there's more strategic thinking in each core function of the business. There's only 6 core functions of the business, and you got to understand what is going on there. And that's, so it's, when it's smaller, it's less. So it's kind of like, if you've got these 4, and you can go search founder scorecard, Dan Martell founder scorecard. I walk through these 4 core
I'll link it in the show notes. Anyone listening in is on.
No. And what happens is when you start, you're probably spending most of your time in the admin work and some of it doing the work, and no time in management, probably no time in strategy, right? And then what you do is you try to buy back some time to spend more time in this next section. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
So you get a part-time VA, and all of a sudden you stop doing the admin stuff like invoicing, receivables, scheduling, onboarding, all that stuff. And now you just do the work. But you don't have any team members, so you don't have anything to manage, and you don't have that, you're not thinking too strategically. You're just doing the work, you got the orders. Then eventually you hire somebody. Now you got to think about management a little bit. So the way I think about it, and this is, I'm going to go to life lesson and then we'll finish that up, is life lesson is, I wish somebody would taught me this real young. This is the equation, okay? It's the life equation for wealth. You start off by trading time for money, right? It doesn't matter if you're a doctor. Like my neighbor is a plastic surgeon, okay? He does not get paid if he doesn't do an operation. Does that make sense? So he gets paid a lot, but he has to trade money for time for money. This is true for employees. It's true for freelancers and individual entrepreneurs, okay? Then eventually you learn that you got to take some of that money. So you trade money for time. Does that make sense? You start getting leverage. So that's where you start buying back some of your time from doing admin tasks to do more work stuff, and buying back more work stuff by bringing on employees to do more management stuff, and eventually buying back, have managers to eventually do more strategic stuff. And then the key though for creating wealth is figuring out and learning the skill set, because this is a skill set, on how to trade money for money, okay? And that's what I've been doing since I was 26 by angel investing in some of the best software entrepreneurs in the world, okay? Today they look like the best. When I met them, they were no different than you and I. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that's the equation that should be driving people forward. So it's not about like, how much time should I be spending there? It's knowing that it exists and you should be spending some time, but as your business grows, you spend more time. kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Dan, if you also think about it this way, E-Myth talks about the book, The E-Myth, Michael Gerber talks about working in the business versus on. If you take those 4 categories and split them in the middle, admin and work is on, or it's in the business. Okay. And management and strategy is on the business. And that's just a really clear way of saying, how do I know if I'm working in or on the business?
Got it. So basically, every entrepreneur listening in, we just want to make sure they work on the management, on the strategy, 0 admin and 0 of those kind of things, basically.
It's not that clear cut, man. It's not like it's less of, do I still do things that look like admin? 0.1% of my time, because I have Robin and she's got an assistant too. So I try not to do any. But will I reply to an email that I shouldn't reply to? Yes. Okay. So it's not to say no. It's just know that that's how we work our way up. Right. So I just don't want people to think like, oh, my job is to do none of that. It's like, no, sometimes
less of that.
Yeah, just less. You should always trying to trade up. Just think of it that way. Am I getting better this quarter than the previous quarter? That's simple.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever track your time and actually measure how much time you spend there? And do you think it's...
Yeah, so you use that. So I teach this framework to my coaching clients, okay? Mm-hmm. And all I do is get them to put everything in their calendar. So that's a framework called the perfect week. And then the founder scorecard, all you do is you color code the entries in your calendar. And as long as you honor your calendar, which you should, then it's easy to visually see that on a weekly basis.
Got it. Interesting. I do want to ask you a bit about problem solving. Since you had a few companies you started and exited, like how was I'll put it this way, like how was the decision making to actually decide which problem to tackle? It's something I'm wondering. I know many other entrepreneurs sometimes wondering like what problem to tackle. Like I'm passionate about A, B, and C. Like is there any conscious process to actually go through and find what to tackle, what to build?
So to me, it's like kind of like what opportunity to pursue.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So one, I'm okay with pursuing all 3 for a little bit, right? So just call them test projects. Don't call it a business. Just call it a project, okay? But the project must involve getting a transaction done. I think too often people like, oh, I tried it out, didn't like it. It's like you didn't even get paid. You just talk to people. That's not testing, okay? So get paid transactions. Then you test them all out. What I like to look for is businesses that have high unmet need, meaning that the market I want to serve is an unmet need. I'm in love with the problem and they're quick to buy, right? So that I create velocity, and that the margins, the gross margins are really good, okay? And the reason why is because if I have high gross margin, then I can invest in growth. So a lot of people don't realize that when you scale, okay, I've grown companies thousands of % per year, okay? When you do that, there's this sound, this big sound of money swooshing right out of your business. It's like, whoosh. It's because you've got to invest so much money to grow, okay? So if you don't have a high gross margin business and figure out your business, and another part of that would be the business model, where you can somehow get the customer to finance your growth by paying up front, setup fees, bulk purchases, multi-year contracts, whatever it is. That's what I look for. So if I'm in love with the problem, the market has an unmet need, I feel like, like I'm in love with the problem, not the solution. So that's a big distinction. So fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I love my customer. The customers have an unmet need that I can serve, and that the economics of the business model are really strong, meaning that cash flow is strong, gross margin strong. And there's like, what makes a good business? I could spend 3 days talking about it, right? Because there's so many different factors, but that's what I would look for if I'm deciding, because I've done it several times where I started from 0 and said, oh, what am I going to do next?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I literally went through this with clarity. I had 3 different ideas. I decided to lean in on clarity, right? Because those 4 things were great. And then coaching, same thing, right? I could have went and become a full-time investor or VC, decided I, don't really care about this problem. Like financing, I don't think it's a problem I'm passionate about. Helping entrepreneurs win and not fail, that I could die for. So, and then just like finding problems that I find interesting, right? And I think that's just whatever, that's anybody anybody's got that. If you want to know, the question you should ask yourself to maybe get you clear on that is, if I gave you $1 billion today and you couldn't spend it on yourself, what problem would you spend it on to make better in the world? And whatever the answer is for that, you should probably figure out how to be in business around that problem, because that alone will be an incredible force of power to push you forward and create something special.
That's a very interesting question. I'll work on it after the call. You mentioned it's okay to work on a few projects. You think it's okay, like when someone's starting like to do MVPs, like 2, 3, 4 things, and then focus all time on
for like
one thing?
6 weeks, not 2 years.
Okay. So to find the minimal amount of time to spend on this like project, actually.
Every project should have a hypothesis of what you think is going to happen in what time frame, right? So I've never not been able to validate an idea in anything less than, like, I can do it. And there's no business. If I wanted to start selling an electric plane in 6 weeks, I could figure out if there's a business there.
Can you give an example of like maybe one time how you've done it?
I mean, clarity. So clarity, I had the idea. I was getting a bunch of emails inbound. I just sold my company Flowtown. People wanted to pick my brain. I'm a Canadian. I'm very, I want to be nice. I want to reply to everybody. I don't have possibly enough time to read these detailed emails and give thoughtful responses. But I thought, I've got some dead time in my day. So I just built this call list where I was just like added them to the list. I used Twilio, and it would just robocall, and it would read to me what they wanted to talk about. And I would just call when we'd talk and they'd hang up. It would just read the next person and call them, and then we'd talk and they'd hang up. So like that was the first idea. Like it was a prototype. It was nothing. It was like there's nobody else could use it. It was like a script that I built for myself, right? But even before that idea, I had the same idea, and I just set it up using 1-800 free conference call and an expert, right? So I reached out to Neil Patel, who a lot of people know. He's an SEO guy. I said, hey, Neil, would you take calls on SEO? And he said, yeah. I said, well, how much per hour? He goes, $2,000 an hour. I go, wow. Okay. Let me see if I can get some people to pay that. And I had a hard time, but I did get a few people. And then I learned a lot, right? I learned, okay, well, maybe the hourly rate's got to be less than $500 an hour. But I also learned when I charge less, the expert notoriety mattered. So Neil would get demand at 2,000, whereas somebody that only want to charge 100, maybe nobody would take him up because they didn't know who he was, right? So there was like this balance of micro celebrity. So it's just really just validating. And it was just like going through that iteration where one day, I think Eric Reese reached out. He saw that I tweeted out my Clarity link, and he says, what's that? And I said, well, it's a way to get paid for your advice and also manage your calendar, your call schedule. And he said, man, if you could add charity donations to that, I think that would be awesome, and I would use it. And I was like, done. Now, I didn't add any magical charity thing. I just added a drop down that they could write into the charity, and it would add it to the profile, and they would have to be responsible for donating it to the charity. To this day, that's how Clarity works. There's no like back end system where we're donating the money to the charity, because I'm not getting involved in your taxes. You get the money and you donate it. It's an honor system. So I think a lot of times people try to make these tests way more complicated. Does that make sense, Yuli? I think there's like the riskiest assumptions around the business model.
Like the shortest way to a transaction. That's kind of maybe
always. I call it minimum viable offer. Okay, not minimum viable product, because the word product is dangerous. Minimum viable offer.
But what about SaaS? Like sometimes I know some products it takes.
Every SaaS can be distilled into services first.
Mm-hmm. So you think if someone wants to build a SaaS, they maybe want to even try to give you service first or something in this arena?
Sell the service first. There's no SaaS from project management to point of sale to ERP that you can't, probably offer a service version of it to validate, but even easier, sell with wireframes. Every company I've ever started, I pre-sold the product with wireframes before I ever built it.
Got it. Very interesting. So I want to ask you, like, why did you decide to focus on coaching, which is basically helping others, and why not building your next company? Since I'm sure you could have raised a bunch of money, or you already have the experience, so you kind of know what to do. Why focus on this?
Well, so the cool part for me is I think in life we go through kind of different phases, right? At the lower end, it's survival, right? Like, dude, my story, like at that stage as a teenager, I was just trying to not die. Like I was just trying to be a productive member of society. It was survival. And then eventually it's, you want to kind of get the struggle, right? It's like, okay, well now I'm struggling, but I want to kind of get out of there. Okay. And then the next level above is success. And that means like, okay, I finally figured out how to be successful. I've created a growth mindset. I got some progress. Then eventually it's significance, right? Where it's like, why am I here? Like, what am I trying to do? And for me, it was that question of, am I here on earth to go start another tech company and solve a big problem using a tech solution? Or am I here to take everything I've learned to help other people that are building those big solutions, solve those problems faster and avoid failure? And that's my contribution. And for me, that is 100% more where I'm indexed to do, right? Because dude, even Clarity was essentially my bullshit attempt to do that. But that wasn't what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to do this, and I was too much of a chicken shit to do it because I was worried about what would people say, right? Why are you coaching, man? Because there's all these life coaches. It's like real estate agents, right? And it was just like all this judgment. And I was so scared of doing what I'm doing today that I went and built Clarity instead. Isn't that crazy?
Interesting. You already wanted to do it before, but since you had those things.
I've been coaching indirectly since I invested in my first entrepreneur. That's what I did. I literally was like getting asked for advice, and I figured if I'm going to help you, I'm going to give you some money with that advice. And that way, if you succeed, I'll get the upside. So then on the economic side, I'm actually a better investor than anything. So like technically it's not, Dan, why don't you start another company? It's, Dan, why don't you just do investing full time? So it's kind of what I did. I said, look, I'm going to keep doing my investments. I'm going to build a coaching practice to essentially teach as much as I can. So the cool part is, and I tell my clients this all the time, right? I coach incredible dudes. They pay me to show up and do the work. Okay. And it's a significant amount. Okay. People say, well, how much does it cost? More than you're expecting, but the value be way more than you could ever imagine. That being said, I take that and I create my YouTube channel for free, 100%. Literally, if you see my YouTube channel, every week, every Monday, I publish a video, and I have for almost 3 years now. And it is 98% of everything I know. Everything I've ever shared on this podcast, on any podcast, I talk about in very specific frameworks to get you results on the YouTube channel for free, right? And it gets 70,000 views a month for SaaS founders, which is one of the largest SaaS channels on YouTube. And the people over here on the coaching side, they pay for it. And then the cool benefit of this whole thing, Yuli, is I'm getting paid to continuously sharpen my saw. So I'm getting better. Then I take that knowledge, I invest, I add more value over here, I get the economic benefit. So I just had to ask myself, do I need to be the CEO of another company? Or am I okay being the guy that supports the next level of the Dropboxes, Slacks, and Salesforces of the world? And the answer was that I feel called to do. This one, I don't really want to do.
Got it. And have you done anything else to overcome it? Like, I think many people have those self-judgments or really like this internal voice, which they want to do this, but they go and do something.
Oh, there was a lot of stuff, man. Like that was probably a 2-year journey. When I say that, I truly mean it. I might have confidence around things. Like, look, I'm a confident dude. I know that. Like tech space, building SaaS companies, raising money, building great product, etc. Like, I know it, man. I fucking put the hours in. I know it cold. I've put the reps. I've eaten shit. I've gone, like, I know that. Then there's this other thing called coaching. I'm selling myself now. I'm not selling a product. Okay. So people aren't making, yeah, it's different. Am I going to be able to get anybody a result, not just a person a result? Because that's different. With coaching, essentially, I need to make sure I explain and communicate properly so that a broader audience gets the result, not just really talented people. Does that make sense? So that's a big unknown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if I don't, what are people going to say? It's, like I can do it for myself, but can I get other people those results? It turned out the answer is absolutely freaking yes. And that's why I've been so successful at that. But like I coached the founder, Ryan Dice from Digital Marketer. A lot of people know him. He's got a product called Praxio. I coached New York Times bestseller, Ryan Levac from Ask Method. He's got a product called Bucket. the team at proposify.com.
I know
A
Kyle.
ton of them, like just literally companies have gone on to YC. I just don't talk about it because I'm their secret weapon behind the scenes. I'm Michael Jordan's coach, right? My client's Michael Jordan. I'm their coach, and I'm totally fine with that. But it took me 2 years to finally, and it was the beginning of last year where I finally went to my social media profiles on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, and said, I coach high-performing SaaS founders. And I said, publish, and that's that. And that's my motto. And you know what happened? I thought people would judge me. My previous investor calls me up. Dan, congrats. Totally see you doing that. Glad to see that. Let me know if there's anybody you want me to refer you. Everybody that I thought would judge me said, dude, that's amazing. That's exactly what you should be doing. And I have people I want you to work with.
So it was the complete opposite of what you expected, basically.
1,000% complete opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And how did it feel afterwards? Like when,
Oh, it was like there was this weight. I felt like I was playing two lives, right? I was like, there's this world of coaching that nobody knew about because I didn't want to say anything. And dude, you can see, you want to know when the difference happened? You can see it. When I start my videos, I used to say, I'm Dan, serial entrepreneur investor, something, maybe just serial entrepreneur investor. And then there was a moment where I was like, I'm Dan, serial entrepreneur investor and creator of SaaS Academy. And that video is pretty much when I said, enough's enough, shut the fuck up, own it, and go do it. And that's what I did. And I'll tell you, man, everything just transformed, right? Because it's like you get to just be in it. So it doesn't matter where you're at in life. There's always another level, another area of identity that you need to get to. And you just need to learn to build the pattern and the skill to get there.
Interesting. You mentioned in your interviews that, like, when I was doing my homework, you're actually a geek and an introvert. Like, I actually wanted to ask you, because you look quite extrovert. You're great at public speaking. You have lots of energy. You present yourself in a great way. Did you do anything to transition towards being like this, or you really have been like this before?
Dude, this is what's crazy. So I got 4 minutes left. I got to bounce, so I apologize. But I'm gonna wrap up here.
Let's wrap it up with this. Yeah,
we can let people know where to find online, because I love connecting with people. So Instagram, YouTube, etc. Just come find me and say hi. I believe in neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is a science that says that our brains can evolve and our minds and our beliefs can shape and shift, okay? I was diagnosed with severe ADHD at 8 years old. Ritalin, 30 milligrams a day, slow release, like you name it, for 15 years, okay? I don't think I have ADHD anymore. Why? I think it's because I did the reps. I reconnected my mind. I reset the neural pathways. I created the myelin. I was consciously practicing the habits to not do that, right? Reading and meditating and eating cleaner and getting away from sugar. Like all these things I think help me kind of overcome it and really build a better, structure. So I think the same thing happened with the kind of the shy, introverted programming kid I used to be. Right? Where, kind of when I was 26, 27, I realized that, hey, if I want to succeed, I need to learn how to communicate better. I need to learn how to lead. I need to learn how to transfer enthusiasm. I need to know how to communicate passion, right? And I read the books, man. I went to the seminars. I did the work. Like I spent $1 million on me, just me. Like, fuck, it sounds like what do you spend $1 million on? I don't know, man. Like every year it's like 80 to 100 grand on just what do I need to learn? What's the next level? What's the belief system? What's next for me? Right. So it's kind of like, I've been doing that forever. So yeah, man, I remember the first time I didn't even host a dinner. I asked one of my partners, the CEO of a company, they're probably 40 million a year in New Jersey. Okay. I'm $1 million or $1.5 million in Canada, nowheres. Nobody knows me. And I cold email the CEO of the company we're working with, asked him if we wanted to do dinner. And I sat in the parking lot for an hour preparing for that dinner. Okay. Nervous, worried, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now I host 150 entrepreneurs multiple times a year for dinners. And I don't even think twice about it. I literally just walk in, excited, ready to go, blah, 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 blah. That was not who I was. And like I said, The person that everybody's hearing today is not going to be the guy in a year, because my growth game is strong. It will never stop. I will never not run and grow businesses. Like, that is just who I am. And the more I'm honest about who I am and own it, the better outcomes I get in life and the more opportunities I have. Like, dude, I'm not here to brag, but like, I grew up in a town of 80,000 people in Eastern Canada. I built 2 venture-backed software companies out of San Francisco. I got invited to spend a week with Richard Branson in his house in Switzerland. Mark Cuban invested in my company, Clarity. Travis Kalanick from Uber was an investor and formal mentor to me when I built my company, Flowtown. You know, I've invested in $4 billion unicorns with my money, not investors' money, my money, okay? I've run marathons. I've jumped out of planes. I skydived. Just in the last week, I went race car driving exotic cars, all the cars you'd want to own in your life. I just tracked them. Then I went rally car racing. Then I went kiteboarding. And I'm just taking a break right now because I've got jumping on my buddy's private jet to go to Ireland, to stop in Iceland, to blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, I can't even believe this is my life. And the cool part, I'm just getting started.
It's amazing.
I hope people understand that where they're at today has no indication, no relevance to where they could be, okay? Because that kid was 20 years ago. And if I look at the kid, I didn't start at plane 0. I had to start in a hole, okay? Anybody listening to this is starting at 0. I was in a hole. I had to crawl out of the hole and then rebuild my life. And in 20 years, I've created what I've done today, and I'm just getting started.
Thank you for saying it. I think we can just wrap up with this. Dan, for people listening in, where do you want to send them? Where can people find you online?
YouTube, if you want content to learn how to be better. Instagram, if you want inspiration. Dan at Dan Martell. It's just Dan Martell, 2lsmartell.com. And then if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, go to danmartell.com. I will see you guys all there. Yuli, incredible time. Appreciate the opportunity. And we'll talk soon.
Great chatting, Dan.
Later, man. All the best.
Bye.